This is a essay or video of a written essay that is available on PLN's SCRBD page. The link to the written article is available in the YouTube video's description box. For a limited time, there will be weekly semi-serious essays about behavioral technology and what could happen, what has happened, and what is happening. Whether you read the essays or watch the essay, hope you get something out of RX's musings on behavioral technology. This week's essay is Mass Quarantine IRL.
This article is going to go off the general theme of introducing behavioral technology. I really feel that this is the beginning of the end of the world as we know it. All that is happening now is ushering in a new way of life, a way of life that will be different from anything before, but will have familiar elements. Behavioral technology will appear within this emerging way of life, and that's why these articles stress the importance of talking about the implications beforehand. The coronavirus crisis is growing worse in places like NY City. I worry that in hindsight, it will be that more people died from the inability to receive proper medical attention than from the coronavirus alone. In an effort to prevent that, I wanted to offer ideas to help the situation and numbers to offer hope that something can be done. In mass quarantine, the numbers showed that about 3% of the people who got the coronavirus in NY City and state died. Why is it important to note the 3% death rate, which has been holding steady? It is not to discount the precautionary measures and say people overreacted. I think most of the measures have helped to keep the number of infections low. However, because there is a need to slow down the panic just as much as the infection and death rate, noting the 3% death rate is important. It is not an invalidation of the quarantines. However, it says that if a person gets the coronavirus, she or he has a 97% chance of surviving and a 3% chance of dying. What is currently happening is that the people who have a 97% chance of surviving are rushing to the emergency room because they think they're going to die. They need medical attention and monitoring in a non-ER setting. If they rush to the hospitals become overwhelmed, and those who fall into the 3% category can't get the care they need. So the 3% keep dying partially because of the panic that caused the 97% to rush to the emergency room and overwhelm the hospital. This isn't to say that those who at first appear to be in the 97% category shouldn't go to the emergency room if they feel the need to. Some people who present as the 97% turn into the 3% for some strange reason. With that said, if there is some way to assess who is most at risk of being in the 3% category and to catch those who turn out to be in the 3% category, even though they didn't appear that way at first, then they have a better chance of surviving. The death toll could probably be lowered. The 97% can then be given the proper medical care in an environment that doesn't cause any more stress than necessary. If they want, they can volunteer to be studied in order to learn more about the coronavirus, its progression, how the body recovers, and other important factors that desperately need to be known right now. It is important to slow down the panic rate, death rate, and infections. When I wrote the article on Thursday, the percentage of coronavirus infections in New York State was 0.5%. New York State population is about 19.54 million. The percentage of coronavirus infections in New York City was about 0.6%. The New York City population is about 8.623 million. The percentages I am using are not the measures officially used to decide the contagious severity of a disease. I am using a rough estimate. The good news is that it appears that the amount of coronavirus infections in the New York State and city population so far is low. In other words, 0.5% of the New York State population has been infected by the coronavirus, and 0.6% of the New York City population has been infected by the coronavirus. That doesn't invalidate the quarantines because it helped keep the percentages low. But let's also calm down because at this point in time, the New York Times reported that some doctors in New York City are pushing for the right to withhold care from patients considered unlikely to recover. And a regional EMT group has issued new guidelines almost unthinkable even days before. If someone is in cardiac arrest and you can't revive them in the field, don't bring them to the emergency room. That is unacceptable and has to stop. So let's calm down a bit and stop making the situation worse. So, as of April 3rd, the coronavirus deaths stayed around 2.7% in New York City, and it increased by about 0.3% from 2.6% to 2.9% in New York State. On April 4th, the coronavirus deaths increased to 4.1% in New York City and increased by about 0.2% from 2.9% to 3.1% in New York State. On April 5th, coronavirus deaths decreased to 3.9% in New York City and increased by about 0.3% from 3.1% to 3.4% in New York State. I'm using numbers from Coronavirus in New York latest updates, which also wrote updates to the totals are not necessarily new infections, they are newly discovered infections. That's important because the numbers could be going up partially because people who have been infected for a while just found out, not because they just got infected. As of today, coronavirus deaths decreased to 3.6% in New York City and increased by about 0.2% from 3.4% to 3.6% in New York State. Coronavirus infections in the New York population is 0.7% in New York State and 0.8% in New York City. As I updated this article, the number of deaths in New York City has decreased. Things appear to be getting better, but I kept the parts of the article written before Monday the same because it offered useful information. The quarantines are working at keeping the amount of people infected by the coronavirus low. The panic is working at making the situation worse by causing strains on the hospitals. Let's calm down for a minute and look at the data with clearer eyes. It says that the situation is not as dire and there is time to prevent a catastrophe. Let the primary care doctors become the intermediary caregivers to the 97% so that the 3% can go to the emergency room and have a better chance to survive. At this point, it's fair to ask if the death toll increased because the coronavirus is so deadly, or is it because the 3% can't get the care they need? Take the strain off the hospitals so that they can treat the severe coronavirus cases as well as serious non-coronavirus cases. Everything happened fast and there was no time to think. Thank you for putting emergency measures in place to prevent the problem from getting out of hand. But now let's get out of panic mode and start putting things together to prevent new problems from developing, as well as continuing to deal with the ongoing crisis more effectively.